Before discussing the detailed history of the Olmec civilization, I'd like to provide a precise historical overview. They are the shadows of the Mesoamerican dawn. Deep in the suffocating heat of the jungle, a civilization rose from the mud, built on blood, and commanded by kings whose faces were carved into stone boulders weighing 50 tons. They invented the calendar, the concept of zero, and the ritual ball game. Then they vanished. We found their colossal portraits buried beneath the earth, staring out with a silent, inscrutable gaze. What terrifying secret did these stone giants hold? What catastrophe ended the reign of the Olmec? And how did their lost knowledge define the world of the Aztecs and the Maya? The answer is etched into the stone, waiting for us to listen. Before we unlock the first clue, the chilling story of how and why these monstrous heads were carved, take a moment to hit that subscribe button below and join our expedition into the heart of the world's most enduring mysteries. Your support helps us pull these forgotten secrets from the dirt. Now, let the excavation begin. Let's start the complete documentary on the Olmec civilization now. They call it the Olmec, a name borrowed for a ghost, meaning the rubber people, assigned centuries later to a civilization that left behind no written history of its own. They are an enigma, shrouded in the suffocating humidity of the jungle. Yet, before the Maya, before the Aztec, before any of the great Mesoamerican empires defined history, the Olmec were the beginning. They were the seed. Their story, encompassing the crucial formative period from roughly 1200 to 400 BC, starts not in the towering sun-baked desert, but deep within the claustrophobic, shadow-drenched swamp. The Olmec civilization wasn't born from an easy environment. It flourished in a specific, almost aggressively hostile place, the Gulf lowlands of modern-day Mexico. Specifically in the sweltering, fertile stretches of Veracruz and Tabasco. This wasn't a highland valley nor a temperate zone. This was the heartland, a world defined by relentless humidity, dense, almost impenetrable jungle, and a dizzying, slow-moving network of rivers. It sounds like a land designed to swallow anything human, yet against all ecological odds, it became the cradle of Mesoamerica's first great power. The secret to this paradox, to the Olmec's improbable accelerated rise, lay buried just inches beneath the surface, alluvial soil. This was the engine of their civilization. Year after year, the region's great rivers, the very arteries of this ancient land, like the Coatzacoalcos, would swell with the seasonal rains. They would relentlessly overflow their banks, creeping across vast plains, depositing a thick, nutrient-rich layer of black silt before eventually retreating. This wasn't merely fertile ground. It was a powerful, self-renewing, and tireless agricultural factory. This perfect earth allowed for immense yields of maize, beans, and squash, the indispensable caloric fuel that would power an entire civilization. This was an environmental blessing, a rare, perfect confluence of conditions comparable in its significance to the fertile cradles of the Nile, the Indus Valley, or Mesopotamia. Such sustained, reliable abundance allowed for something revolutionary, a population boom that quickly concentrated in specific areas. And where populations concentrate, authority soon follows. With this stability and abundance, the very fabric of Olmec society began to shift. An elite class emerged, shielded from the daily struggle for survival by the organized mass labor of the populace. Their collective power was immense. These elites began to demand the symbolic. They required the sophisticated. They needed the luxury artifacts, the finely carved jade, the polished magnetite mirrors, the complex pottery, that would not only define their culture, but visually mandate their absolute authority. The stage was set for a civilization to coalesce, but the precise timing of this momentous transformation remained, for decades, elusive. For a long time, historians and early archaeologists, working with fragmented evidence, placed the Olmec's initial flourishing, the moment their distinct culture began, between $1,400 and $1,200 BC. They theorized a gradual ascent from less complex neighboring cultures. But the story of the Olmec, like many ancient histories, was about to be rewritten by the mud itself. The seismic shift in our understanding began with the discoveries at El Manatee. This wasn't a dry, easily accessible dig. It was a sacred bog, a natural oxygen-deprived time capsule capable of preserving organic materials with eerie perfection. Here, deep within the murky depths, archaeologists unearthed a trove of ritually deposited offerings, incredibly preserved wooden busts, early examples of the ceremonial rubber balls used in the ball game, and the remains of infants. The evidence, rigorously carbon-dated, sent shockwaves through the academic world. It pushed the definitive timeline back, not merely to 1400 BC, but to at least $1,600–1,500 BC. The roots of the Olmec civilization were far older, stretching back to the early farming cultures of Tabasco, which had developed the same food crops and technologies millennia earlier. What we finally recognize as the fully formed Olmec, with its distinctive monumental art and centralized organization, first appears undeniably powerful at San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan, around $1,400 BC. This wasn't a slow evolution. It was a rapid, concentrated explosion of cultural complexity. A civilization, seemingly fully realized and aggressive in its dominance, emerged from the alluvial plain. The first true capital, the nucleus of this emerging power, was San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan. Flourishing from roughly $1,400 BC, it was less a city and more a meticulous project of social engineering. It stood as a colossal testament to centralized authority. The heartland's first great city temple complex was not built naturally. It was shaped by immense labor, a meticulously organized center of political and demographic concentration. The very existence of this massive, built-up platform demonstrated that an elite could command armies of workers for purposes beyond mere subsistence, mobilizing them for monumental construction. The city's strategic geography within the vast river basin was crucial. Water was the undisputed highway of the Olmec world, connecting vital resources, precious jade from distant Guatemala, razor-sharp obsidian from the highlands, to the central seat of power. This network funneled immense wealth and resources, consolidating the elite's absolute command. San Lorenzo reigned supreme, the unchallenged power, for 5 centuries. But even the most absolute power is subject to the unpredictable forces of nature and human ambition. Around $900 BC, the great center of San Lorenzo was suddenly abandoned. Coupled with this desertion was evidence of widespread, deliberate destruction of its massive monuments around the $950 BC. Was this an internal revolt? A bloody overthrow? While human conflict is plausible, the prevailing theory points to a more unsettling environmental catalyst. As San Lorenzo faded, a new power rose up, La Venta. This new capital, flourishing from $900 BC until its own mysterious collapse around $400 BC, became the epicenter of the Olmec world. La Venta was grander, a massive ceremonial center featuring the colossal Great Pyramid, a man-made earthen mountain that remains a primary feature of the landscape. It showcased spectacular, almost obsessive displays of power, burying vast ritual offerings, including 1,000 tons of serpentine blocks deep beneath its earthworks. But why the shift in centers? The very rivers that had given the Olmec life, that had ensured their civilization's birth and growth, may have taken it all away. The Olmec were utterly dependent on their unique riverine environment. Minor shifts in river courses, perhaps triggered by localized tectonic upheavals or subsidence, or the relentless siltation caused by centuries of intensive farming, would have had catastrophic consequences. The stable, nourishing river systems would have become choked, stagnant, or completely diverted. Their foundational agricultural heartland would have failed. The intricate transportation networks that sustained the ruling elite would have been crippled. This environmental failure is the most compelling theory for the civilization's ultimate end. Between $400 and $350 BC, the population in the eastern heartland dropped precipitously. It was not a gradual decline. It was a vanishing. The region simply became unsuited for large groups of farmers. Their economic foundation was destroyed. Their trade networks fractured. Their elite, stripped of the ability to command sustenance, faded into obscurity. Other compelling theories suggest relentless volcanism, eruptions blanketing the fertile ground, forcing the populace to scatter. Whatever the cause, the first great civilization of Mesoamerica was gone. The region remained a mysterious, silent void until the 19th century, its monumental secrets buried deep beneath the earth. Yet, even in their enigmatic disappearance, the Olmec left their indelible mark. They are credited with the foundational firsts of Mesoamerica: the ritual practice of bloodletting, the development of the Mesoamerican ball game, the earliest proposed examples of a writing system, and possibly the invention of the long count calendar and the concept of zero. The Olmec were the crucible. Their period from $1,200 to $400 BC was the deep, unseen foundation upon which every subsequent great empire was built. They left no name for themselves, but they left evidence of an unimaginable power, a power that could move 50-ton stones across vast jungles and memorialize its absolute rulers in the eternal language of stone. The vanishing act of the Olmec left the jungle silent, but not empty. Deep beneath the roots and the shifting mud, they left their most baffling, profound legacy. Not their cities, which were made mostly of perishable earth and timber, but their monuments. These were not abstract statues nor simple markers. These were faces, and they were colossal. 17 enormous heads have been dragged from the earth to date, scattered across the ancient centers of San Lorenzo, La Venta, Tres Zapotes, and the Lone Sentinel at Rancho La Cobata. They range in size from the $1.47 meter, $4 FT $10 in pair at Tres Zapotes, to the staggering $3.4 meter, $11 FT monolith at Rancho La Cobata. These are not merely large statues. They are a declaration. Scholars estimate the heaviest weigh between 25 and 55 tons, $28 and $61 short tons. The question is not simply how they made them, but why. Why dedicate such an insane expenditure of resources, labor, and genius to carving the face of a man? For a long time, these colossal heads were a riddle wrapped in stone. Early theorists speculated they might be ball players, given the distinct helmet-like headwear that adorns each one. The Mesoamerican ball game was a ritual as old as the Olmec themselves, a deadly, sacred contest. But as more heads were unearthed and studied, a different, more powerful consensus emerged. These were not ball players. They were rulers. They were the absolute monarchs, the supreme authorities of their time, perhaps dressed as ball players to invoke martial or religious might. Look closely at the features. No two heads are alike. Each possesses a distinct, individualized set of features, suggesting they are individualized portraits captured at a specific moment in time. The thick lips, the broad nose, the powerful jaw, these are not generalized deities. They are men. And their helmets are not simple coverings. They are adorned with distinctive elements, almost like heraldry. These elements, claws, symbols, glyphs, and plaques, suggest personal or group symbols, perhaps marking their lineage, their military rank, or their specific supernatural connection to the Olmec pantheon. They are visual mandates, legitimizing their rule for all time. The act of their creation was itself an act of absolute power, a display designed to intimidate and to awe. The stone for these monolithic portraits was not local. It was volcanic basalt, a material prized for its durability and resistance to time. The source for the San Lorenzo and La Venta heads lay in the Sierra de los Tuxtlas Mountains, dozens of miles away. The basalt for these sculptures came from Cerro Sintepec, or perhaps from the Llano del Jicaro workshop. Consider the logistics. A 50-ton boulder must be quarried, rough-carved on a mountainside, and then somehow dragged or floated across a dense, swampy, river-laced jungle to its final destination. It is an undertaking of Napoleonic scale, a testament to the organizational genius of the Olmec elite. Estimates suggest that moving just one of these colossal heads required the coordinated efforts of 1,500 people for 3 to 4 months. Every single one of those people, every farmer, every laborer, every slave, was mobilized by the ruler whose face they were transporting. The journey was the spectacle. The journey was the subjugation. When a populace is forced to spend months dragging the stone likeness of their leader through the jungle, the message of absolute authority is impossible to ignore. But the story of the colossal heads doesn't end with their creation. Many of them and many other monuments bear the marks of deliberate mutilation. Faces were smashed, pieces were broken off, and statues were buried and sometimes later disinterred and reset in new locations. At least 2 of the heads were even recycled or recarved. This wasn't simple destruction. It speaks to ritual, perhaps to the political dethroning of a specific lineage or ruler. When an Olmec ruler died or lost power, his carved face was ritually defaced or ceremonially killed, a powerful act of erasure in a culture where the head, it is speculated, was believed to contain the very soul and life essence of the individual. To smash the face was to destroy the spiritual power and the political legitimacy of the dynasty it represented. The facial features themselves have fueled one of the most enduring, yet largely discredited, controversies in Olmec history. The flat face, the broad nose, and the thick, full lips of the portraits have led some outsiders, particularly in the mid-20th century, to speculate about a pre-Columbian connection to Africa. Proponents of this theory suggested the Olmec must have been African immigrants who crossed the Atlantic. However, the overwhelming majority of archaeologists and Mesoamerican scholars emphatically reject this claim. The explanations for the features are far more grounded in the local environment and artistic tradition. First, the features may have been dictated in part by the limitations of the basalt boulders. Sculpting fine details on such a coarse, finite block of stone can be technically challenging. More importantly, the features, the broad nose, the thick lips, and even the epicanthic fold visible in the eyes of some heads are all characteristics still found among the modern indigenous peoples of Veracruz and Tabasco. The artist or art historian Miguel Covarrubias demonstrated this as early as the 1940s, publishing photographs of Olmec artwork, juxtaposed with modern Mexican Indians, displaying strikingly similar features. Furthermore, the Olmec carving corpus includes many different styles and subjects, not all of which display these features. The African origin hypothesis relies on the unlikely assumption that the sculptors intended a perfect, photorealistic representation of the entire populace, an assumption easily disproven by the numerous fantastic, anthropomorphic creatures found throughout Olmec art. The colossal heads are therefore more than just art. They are stone photographs of the founders of Mesoamerican civilization. They are proof of a hyper-organized society capable of mobilizing armies of labor for purely symbolic ends. They are silent witnesses to the turbulent, violent rise and fall of the Olmec's first kings. They are the undeniable physical proof that the foundation of Mesoamerica was built on the command of giants. Their creation was a political act. Their movement was a display of dominance, and their calculated destruction was a ritualistic act of regicide. They are the signature of a civilization obsessed with power, lineage, and the face of the ruler. And it is the other objects left behind, the smaller, more unsettling carvings, that begin to reveal the dark, supernatural basis for that power. The immense stone heads of the Olmec served as declarations of political power, portraits of individual, temporal authority. But to truly grasp the unsettling nature of the Olmec world, to understand the terrifying source of that authority, we must shift our gaze from the monumental to the minuscule. We must examine the small, meticulously carved artifacts of jade, serpentine, and greenstone, materials valued in their culture far more highly than gold. These precious objects reveal the hidden, supernatural architecture of the Olmec cosmos, a dark cosmology ruled by composite, powerful entities and focused entirely on one primal, terrifying figure, the Werejaguar. The Olmec were defined as an artistic culture long before they were defined as a political one. Their artwork, forged in the most demanding and precious of materials, is instantly recognizable, characterized by a potent, almost jarring blend of naturalism and highly stylized, feverish anthropomorphic creatures. This contrast is key. The naturalistic carvings captured the temporary rulers. The grotesque, stylized monstrosities captured the eternal spirits and gods that legitimized those rulers. These intricate carvings were not merely decoration for the elite. They were instruments of ritual, tangible keys used to access the volatile world of the divine. The most pervasive and certainly the most unnerving figure in this religious complex, is the Werejaguar. This is not a cuddly fantasy. Imagine an infant, rendered in dense, polished greenstone, but bearing the unambiguous, menacing features of a great cat. The distinguishing motifs are a consistent, coded language of power, a thick, down-turned mouth, permanently contorted into a snarl or a roar, almond-shaped, deep-set eyes, and, critically, a distinct, profound cleft head. This vertical groove, carved directly into the crown of the skull, is not an aesthetic choice. It is a direct symbolic reference to the natural indentation found in the skull of a fully grown, powerful jaguar. The Olmec, existing in a world where the jaguar was the ultimate apex predator, the nocturnal hunter, the silent embodiment of raw, untamed jungle power, worshipped this hybrid entity. They believed, based on accounts passed down to later civilizations, that the Werejaguar race originated from the mythic union of a jaguar and a woman. This composite creature, part human and part terrifying spirit, provided the ultimate, most sacred source of legitimacy for the Olmec elite. A ruler's power did not come from simple inherited wealth. It came from his real or spiritual connection to the terrifying, fertile power of the Werejaguar lineage. Every act of governance, every command, every colossal head was rooted in this primal supernatural claim. Two specific categories of artifacts provide tangible evidence of the ritual applications of this unsettling iconography. The first are the Kun's axes, sometimes called votive axes. These figures, painstakingly carved from hardstone, are often dominated by the massive head, which can comprise half of the figure's entire volume. They consistently feature the flat nose, the open, downturned mouth, and the cleft brow of the Werejaguar. They were not tools for chopping. They were objects of staggering spiritual power, almost certainly employed in specific high-status rituals performed by the elite. To possess a Kun's axe was to wield a tangible piece of divine authority. They served as the profound spiritual counterpart to the colossal heads, a frozen portrait of the absolute, sacred power that stood behind the physical throne. The second crucial category is the jade face mask. These smaller, hardstone carvings are exquisitely detailed, often fusing human and jaguar facial features with unnerving elegance. Jade, sourced from the remote Motagua River Valley hundreds of kilometers away in Guatemala, was the most precious material in the Olmec world, reserved exclusively for the ruling class. To wear or possess a mask made of this vibrant green material was to announce one's sacred rank, connecting the wearer physically and ritually to the earth and the spirits. Intriguingly, and crucially to the enduring mystery, no jade masks have ever been definitively recovered in an archaeologically controlled context at an Olmec site. They only appear in the deposits of later successor cultures. In one astonishing revelation, an Olmec-style mask was discovered deliberately buried within the ceremonial precinct of Tenochtitlan, the great capital of the Aztec Empire, founded nearly 2 millennia after the Olmec vanished. The mask would have been 2,000 years old when the Aztecs revered it and placed it in their holiest ground. This fact reveals a profound and enduring truth. The successor civilizations viewed these artifacts as true antiquities, relics imbued with the raw, terrifying power of the first Mesoamerican people. They valued these pieces, the concentrated spiritual power of the founding civilization, enough to collect them and ritually deposit them in their own sacred centers. The Olmec's spiritual influence endured across 2 millennia. The power derived from these fierce divine figures required sustenance, a debt often paid in blood. While the Olmec archaeological record lacks the explicit, bold artwork of ritual bloodletting found in later civilizations, the physical evidence for the practice is undeniable. Archaeologists have recovered numerous natural stingray spikes and sharp maguey thorns at Olmec sites, tools universally recognized as instruments used to pierce the tongue, earlobes, or genitals in a ritual sacrifice of blood. This controlled offering of life force was a spiritual necessity, a mechanism to appease the gods and prevent the collapse of the cosmos, making it a cornerstone ritual for nearly all subsequent Mesoamerican societies, indicating its origin lay with the Olmec. However, The question of human sacrifice remains significantly more speculative and profoundly disturbing. While no Olmec artwork unambiguously shows sacrificial victims, the discoveries at the bog shrine of El Manati force a chilling consideration. Here, amidst the other sacred offerings, archaeologists discovered disarticulated skulls and femurs, alongside the complete skeletons of newborns or fetuses. While the specific method of death remains unknown, these remains heavily fuel the hypothesis of infant sacrifice. This grim practice is often linked by scholars to ritual art depicting limp, often supine, Werejaguar babies, most famously represented on La Venta's Altar 5 and the Las Limas figure. These artifacts show a powerful figure, a ruler or shaman, holding a limp, infant-like figure with the distinct features of the Werejaguar. It is a profoundly unsettling tableau. The ruler, the designated intercessor, presenting the ultimate sacrifice, a newborn, to the hungry supernatural forces that govern their world. The ambiguity only intensifies the suspense. Did the Olmec, the founders of Mesoamerica, establish the terrifying, bloody tradition of ritual human sacrifice that would define the beliefs of the entire region for thousands of years? This entire interconnected system, the colossal heads, the jade masks, the ritual blood, points unequivocally to the central role of the ruler as the supreme religious figure. Their direct, established link to the Olmec deities, particularly the terrifying Werejaguar, provided the necessary divine legitimacy for their absolute command. The presence of transformation figures, small sculptures depicting a figure midway through a terrifying physical shift into a great cat, confirms the importance of shamanism. The Olmec ruler was not merely a king or a military commander. He was the primary shaman, the descendant of the Werejaguar, the one who shed his own blood and perhaps the blood of others to maintain the cosmic balance. The immense value and artistry poured into these jade and serpentine objects confirmed that the Olmec elite was not just wealthy. They were, in their own terrifying belief system, literally divine. This terrifying, potent cosmology, carved into the enduring stone of their smaller artifacts, was the true spiritual engine behind their political supremacy and the source of their profound influence across all of formative Mesoamerica. The Olmec power, manifest in the terrifying faces of their colossal heads and the sacred objects of the Werejaguar, required constant fuel. This fuel was not generated solely within the borders of their humid homeland. It was drawn from the vast, complex, and often dangerous world outside. The enduring silence of the jungle is constantly betrayed by a single powerful fact. The Olmec were not isolated. They were the architects of Mesoamerica's first extensive long-distance trade network, a web of economic power that stretched hundreds of kilometers, binding nascent chiefdoms to the absolute authority of San Lorenzo and La Venta. This trade was driven by a fundamental scarcity, the Olmec heartland. For all its agricultural bounty, was almost entirely devoid of the luxury and practical hard materials necessary for their society to function and for their elite to assert their status. They lacked durable stone for tools, obsidian for blades, and the highly prized greenstone for ritual objects. This deficit created a compelling, inescapable demand, and the Olmec were uniquely positioned, by virtue of their advanced social organization and strategic river network, to meet it. Consider the material that defined their elite status: jade. Jade, along with the softer but equally valuable serpentine and greenstone, was a material of spiritual power linked to water, fertility, and the supernatural. It was the color of the rain-fed maize and the eternal jungle. Yet, not a single source of jade existed in the swampy Gulf lowlands. The most valued jade was sourced from the Motagua River Valley in eastern Guatemala, a staggering distance that required traversing harsh highland terrain. The procurement of this single crucial material illustrates the monumental reach of the Olmec. It wasn't simply bartering. It was the meticulous organization of caravans, the establishment of alliances or zones of influence, and the protection of routes spanning hundreds of miles through territories inhabited by entirely foreign groups. Equally vital, though less glamorous than jade, was obsidian. This volcanic glass was the steel of the ancient world. When flaked, its edges are sharper than any modern surgical scalpel. It was essential for tools, weapons, and ritual implements. Like jade, the heartland contained none. The Olmec had to secure their supply from sources far to the south, primarily from the highlands of Guatemala at sites like El Chayal and San Martin Jilotepeque, or sometimes from as far north as Puebla. These distances ranged from 200 to 400 kilometers, 120 to 250 miles away. The sheer volume of obsidian required by a civilization that built colossal monuments suggests a relentless, efficient, and sustained system of acquisition. The movement of these goods, jade, obsidian, and other prestige materials like magnetite and marine shell, was the circulatory system of the Olmec world. While they were not the first to exchange goods in Mesoamerica, the Olmec period saw a radical expansion in both the variety of materials exchanged and the geographical extent of their trading routes. Their well-watered alluvial environment, while challenging for overland travel, gifted them the Coatzacoalcos River Basin as a superior transportation network. Goods could be moved in significant quantities using rafts or canoes, bypassing the difficulties of cutting roads through the dense jungle. This transportation advantage was a crucial factor in their ability to centralize their power and project their influence outwards. The result of this sophisticated trade network was the widespread diffusion of Olmec-style artifacts and iconography across vast distances. Olmec influence is found in the archaeological records of sites hundreds of kilometers outside the heartland, a phenomenon archaeologists call Olmecoid. In central Mexico, major centers like Tlatilco and Tlapacoya show the adoption of hollow baby face motif figurines and distinctive ceramic designs. In the Valley of Morelos, the powerful center of Chalcatzingo features large-scale monumental art and rock carvings rendered in the unambiguous Olmec style. Even in the distant southern Maya area, sites in Guatemala, such as Tacalic Abaj, exhibit probable Olmec influence. This widespread cultural diffusion, this Olmec shadow cast across the entire region, demands an explanation. Was it trade? Was it conquest? Was it a form of religious or philosophical conversion? Numerous theories have been advanced. Some suggested outright Olmec colonization. Others posited that Olmec artisans traveled and worked directly for foreign elites. A few even suggested Olmec military domination. The generally accepted, yet still suspenseful interpretation is that the Olmec iconography became intimately associated with elite status. As the first true civilization in the region, the Olmec represented the epitome of organization, power, and divine connection, the ultimate brand of authority. Developing local chieftains in distant villages and emerging towns recognized this. They consciously adopted Olmec artistic styles, designs, and artifacts, particularly those made of rare, imported materials like jade and serpentine, in an effort to bolster their own status, legitimize their nascent regimes, and announce their participation in the most advanced cultural network of the time. By accepting the Olmec aesthetic, they were, in effect, accepting the supremacy of the Olmec cultural and economic sphere. The trade web, therefore, was not merely an economic structure. It was a mechanism of soft power. It was the means by which the political and spiritual narratives of the rulers of San Lorenzo and La Venta, the narrative of the Werejaguar, and the power of the colossal head were transmitted, accepted, and rebroadcast across Mesoamerica. It transformed the Olmec from a localized kingdom into a true foundational culture, setting the aesthetic, ritual, and economic stage for every great civilization that followed. The jungle cradle of giants exerted its influence not through massive armies, but through the irresistible, silent language of desirable, sophisticated, and sacred goods. The final mystery of the Olmec is not why they vanished, but why, after their sudden disappearance around $400 BC, their ideas persisted. Civilizations die, but culture is often eternal. The Olmec may have become a ghost in the jungle, but their genius, their foundational technologies, their ritual practices, and their mathematical concepts lived on, becoming the unspoken, essential language of every major Mesoamerican society that followed, from the Maya to the Aztec. They were the crucible, the inventors whose work future empires simply inherited. Perhaps the most intellectually profound inheritance was the Olmec's apparent mastery of mathematics and cosmology. Consider the concept of zero. It is a revolutionary abstract idea, fundamental to all advanced mathematics. The long count calendar, used famously by the Maya, was a positional numeral system based on a vigesimal base 20 count. This system absolutely required a placeholder, a zero, to function. Because the 6 earliest artifacts bearing long count dates were all discovered outside the immediate Maya homeland, and 3 were found directly within the Olmec heartland, scholars widely believe the system, and crucially, the concept of zero, was an Olmec invention. The second oldest known long count date, found on Stela C at Tres Zapotes, dates to 32 BC, and it uses a shell glyph to represent zero. This date is centuries after the Olmec civilization itself officially ended, yet it exists at a post-Olmec site on the edge of the old heartland. It stands as one of the earliest documented uses of the zero concept in human history, demonstrating that an Olmec invention persisted and defined the entire chronological system of the region. Connected directly to this mathematical prowess was the Mesoamerican calendar itself. The precision and complexity of the calendar system, including the 260-day sacred count and the 365-day vague year, was the structural core of Mesoamerican life, dictating planting, warfare, and ritual. While the specific Olmec calendar mechanism remains less certain than the long count, their ability to calculate and record such advanced chronological data suggests they were the system's initial architects. The fact that the Olmec were already using the necessary mathematical concepts, the base 20, system, and the zero, makes them the strongest candidate for inventing the temporal structure upon which all future Mesoamerican societies built their civilizations. Beyond the abstract realm of numbers, the Olmec provided the practical, everyday framework for regional culture. They are the strongest candidates for originating the Mesoamerican ballgame. This was not a sport. It was a deadly intense ritual, played in massive stone courts by all later cultures. The Olmec provided the material essence of the game, rubber. The term Olmec itself comes from the Nahuatl Olmecatl, meaning rubber people, named by the later Aztecs for the contemporary inhabitants of the same region who supplied the material. The process of extracting the latex from the Castilla elastica rubber tree and curing it with the juice of the Ipomoya alba vine was perfected by the Olmec. At the bog shrine of El Manatee, a dozen rubber balls dating to $1,600 BC or earlier have been found, predating the earliest known ball courts. The Olmec literally supplied the ball, and likely set the rules, for the most enduring sacred game in the region. In the realm of ritual and warfare, the Olmec established protocols that lasted for millennia. We have already explored the evidence for ritual: bloodletting, the sacrifice of a ruler's own blood via stingray, spines or thorns as a practice almost certainly, formalized by the Olmec and immediately adopted by their successors. More chillingly, the speculation around infant sacrifice, fueled by the finds at El Manatee and the terrifying iconography of the Werejaguar infants, suggests the Olmec may have instituted the practice of human sacrifice, later amplified into the massive public spectacles of the Maya and Aztec. The symbolic language was set. The gods demand life essence, and the ruler is the one responsible for offering it. Finally, the Olmec left the first tentative steps toward writing. While scholars debate whether the symbols found on the Cascajal block, dated between $1,100 and $900 BC, constitute a complete writing system, the fact remains that this block contains 62 distinct symbols that are currently the earliest evidence of graphic communication found in the Western Hemisphere. Similarly, symbols found at the San Andres site from 650 BC show glyphs similar to the later Maya script. While the later Isthmian script may represent a transitional form, the Olmec clearly initiated the process of sophisticated record-keeping. They began the long, difficult journey from simple iconography to formal glyphic writing. laying the cognitive groundwork that would culminate in the massive stone histories of the classic Maya. The Olmec's enduring legacy is one of unconscious continuity. They disappeared mysteriously, their great earthen cities abandoned, their immense political power fractured. But their innovations, the sacred calendar, the necessary concept of zero, the violent rituals of blood, the defining ball game, and the very first attempts at writing, were not lost. They were woven into the DNA of the civilizations that emerged from the jungle silence. The Maya chronicled their history using an Olmec calendar, and the Aztecs played their sacred games with Olmec-cured rubber. The colossal heads are merely the dramatic signature of the Olmec. Their true eternal power lies hidden in the mathematics, the rituals, and the concepts that govern the very structure of the ancient world. The Olmec were not just the first great civilization. They were the invisible operating system running Mesoamerica for the next 2,000 years. The jungle has finally yielded its secrets. The Olmec were not merely an early culture. They were the architects of the Mesoamerican mind. We have uncovered the colossal stone portraits of their divine kings, the terrifying face of the Werejaguar that fueled their sacred power, and the vast, invisible trade web that spread their influence for hundreds of miles. They were the first to master the art of centralized power in the Americas, and their legacy is literally the operating system of subsequent history, the calendar, the zero, the ritual ball game, and the very structure of kingship. Yet, a profound silence hangs over their final years. Between $400 and $350 BC, their great cities faded, not in fire, but perhaps in the mud and silt, victims of the very alluvial environment that gave them birth. The Olmec vanished, but their powerful, dark mythology, their ingenious science, and their monumental ambition persisted, becoming the inheritance of the Maya, the Zapotec, and the Aztec. The colossal heads, once buried in the earth, now stare at us, forcing us to ask, what can their rise and ultimate, mysterious failure teach us about the fragile balance between human genius and the relentless, unforgiving power of nature? This documentary is part of a larger expedition into the world's forgotten empires. To ensure you don't miss our next deep dive, where we explore the Olmec influence on the rise of the Maya city-states, make sure you are subscribed and have hit that notification bell. If this journey into the jungle's secrets revealed something new to you, share this video and tell us in the comments. Which Olmec innovation, the zero or the colossal head, do you think was their greater achievement? Thank you for watching, and join us next time when we search for the next ghost of history.